All right, here we are, guys. A Master Duel tier list of what I think will be the most effective decks post Strong Will, guys. Keep in mind, since we're at the beginning of the format, I'm not 100% sure if these will actually be the thing, but I have a strong sense of what's happening inside of the Master Duel meta, seeing that I play way too much now. So, of course, we have 5 different categories here. Best decks are probably going to give you, or are going to give you, the best opportunity to climb the ranks with ease. Next best are not necessarily the meta decks, but still are really, really good. Takes a really good pilot, are strategies that are fairly good if you know what you're doing. A lot of effort, aren't necessarily bad Master Duel decks, but unfortunately, it's going against you. And then lastly, Xbox Crossplay Off is exactly what it is. I would not recommend you play these decks. I'll also be indicating what I think would be hardest for you. So like hypothetically, if I'm saying ABC, I think you can get to maybe gold to it. Once you start to get the platinum, the deck is going to be a lot of effort because this deck is a walking brick. I don't think it is a great Yu-Gi-Oh deck right now. Excuse me, because of the hits to cards like Union Carrier, that was a complete destruction of the entire deck. Adamantipator, oh my god, if Adamantipator is not one of the best decks in the game, it's one of the next best decks. And I think there's some hidden support inside of the new Strong Will set that's coming out. The G-Golem cards actually work with Adamantipator, but so do the Gym Knights. You could actually use this to flex into a Gym Knight FTK. You can also use the G-Golem cards to be able to work. Like, just Earth decks in general are a lot better right now, but overall, even before that, Adamantipator was probably a next best deck and is probably teetering between one of the best decks and the best deck in Master Duel. Despia, this deck is still one of the best decks in Master Duel, in my humble opinion. And like I said before, losing Alibur Jester of Despia and the branded opening the 2 did hurt significantly, as you guys don't see this card in the top ladder anymore as much as you used to, but it still is a very powerful, very respectable deck. But all you need to do for currently is Ash Blossom the branded fusion, and you'll be in a pretty good spot. Now, Blue Eyes White Dragon, guys. Go ahead and turn that Xbox off, my guy. I'm going to need you to sign off if you're playing Blue Eyes. Very, very unfortunate. I think the highest you can get the Blue Eyes on a consistent level, not saying that this is the highest the Blue Eyes deck will ever be. I'm pretty sure there's a Blue Eyes player that somehow got the diamond, maybe cheated by playing a good deck or something. No, I'm just playing. But seriously, I think the highest you'll probably get is gold with Blue Eyes. It's probably the ceiling, and if you're happy with gold and Blue Eyes, who the fuck cares, all right? As long as you're having fun and you're doing your thing. But Blue Eyes, probably right there. It's not a deck that I would invest into trying to get into the highest ranks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Now, Crystal Beast probably will be one of the strongest decks coming out of Strong Will, considering that it does get all of the prints that we are seeing on the leaks. It is one of the next best to the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks, and this would be a solid deck to get into if we do get these Ishizu cards or these tier limit cards, because this deck can play Dimension Shifter, and it can play Dimension Shifter extremely well, meaning that the tier limit cards will really suffer to that, and this deck does not need the graveyard, which there's going to be a lot of graveyard hate coming up in the next upcoming months, and this deck will probably prepare for you, and from what I know, it's a pretty solid budget deck from what I am seeing on the cards right now. The Crystal Beast monsters are rares and common. Cyber Dragon, guys, go ahead and I'm going to need you to turn off that Xbox for me, my guy. Just sign off and head home, my guy. Cyber Dragon is another one of those trap Yu-Gi-Oh decks, guys. Unfortunately, these decks, they actually function way better than what they did in the past, but that doesn't make them good Yu-Gi-Oh decks just because they were better. Too many lines of interruption and too many bricks. They're way too old and need to be modified into a newer playstyle to be consistent. Actually, Konami had a job. They had a chance, multiple chances to make Blue Eyes and Dark Magician cards actually viable support, and I think that they missed the mark just by a little bit multiple times, because these decks could easily takes a really good pilot, but we're still waiting for those cards to break them. But I would say mainly because of consistency issues, all 3 of these decks would be an Xbox crossplay off. Best place, probably gold. I think you'd be able to get the gold with those decks. Ignister is one of those strategies that I think takes a really good pilot. One thing I want to point out about Ignister is that this deck can be interchangeable. It can be Ignister Magnemith, it can be Ignister, it can be so many other things. a lot of times if you just summon your Big Daddy Ignister monster, which I cannot remember its name at this current time, please forgive me, you can typically just win the game right now. It's a very powerful card, but the only unfortunate side is that you're prone to cards like Maxi, and players are starting to run Nibiru now, and Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, so you might want to be able to play through those lines a little bit more successfully. Dino, I would say, is almost at full power in Master Duel, and it would take a really good pilot to be able to play very consistently. By the way, the Cyberse monster is the Arrival Ignister Cyberse, or whatever it's called. Dinos are a deck that are really, really good. Unfortunately, losing Ash Blossom, losing to Ash off of your Misk being able to banish is one of the key choke points. And with Psyframe Gamma at 1, there isn't a lot of ways to combat that. I think that Dinos are better as a going second OTK type deck, especially in Master Duel, since it's best of 1, because normally you can be able to break any of your opponent's board and just smack them in the face and win the game. Still a really, really solid deck though. Dinomorphia, I would 100% say Dinomorphia is not a bad deck, but 100% in a lot of effort. Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are getting smarter and learning how to play around back row, and I'm actually very proud of you guys. Losing the dice roll isn't a death sentence, but it does become significantly harder to be able to pop off with your play when your opponent summons negate. Like when they just do what they do and you can't get on the board, it does suck. This is a deck that does need to go to Gamma. My apologies. I meant Gamma, not Misk. Gamma's at 2, and they banish your Misk with Ash. But chat's actually helping me out here just a little bit. But the fact that this deck, I don't want to say struggles going second, but does have a harder time going second, and doesn't necessarily establish a board that is like insane. Granted, it is really good against Nibiru, not great against Ash, and pretty good against Maxi. So it does have some really good trades here. Dragon Link, I would say this deck still takes a really good pilot. I don't think there's ever a format where this strategy will ever be a bad deck. It's a really solid deck to go ahead and pick up, as it allows you to combo for days. It can play through Nibirus. It can play through Ash. Maxi is a whole different animal. You maybe want to stop special summoning before your opponent does draw into one of those. It's just overall a really, really powerful deck, and Chaotic Ruler still does exist. Also, your opponent being able to mill off your cards with the new Ishizu cards will put dragons in your graveyard that could potentially even help you. Drytron, I would say Drytron is a very solid Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. Again, the Ishizu cards are going to be thought of as some of the next best cards. We're in a really weird spot with the Ishizu cards in Master Duel because as of looking at Strong Will, there's no tier limit cards, there's no Notoria cards. So the Ishizu cards are like, they're not good, kind of. Like the runic cards can still, the runic deck can still use the Ishizu cards, but everything else is kind of like, I really don't see any use for it. No doubt, I think players will still try to attempt to play it and then try to use it in some of their other decks, but some of the best decks that I think are going to be effective, we're going to talk about them in a second, and I don't think that it'll be too effective against some of the metas. A deck like Outlich, actually, Outlich is still going to be, and it takes a really good pilot. Look, guys, we had Grass is Greener Outlich. And even when you go Grass is Greener inside of an Outlich deck, that doesn't guarantee you a win. Now you're going to add more bricks with Kelbeck and Madura and your Keldo and Ajido and all these other cards if you wanted to, just to add more bricks to the pile. I don't think that that's necessarily the answer for Outlich. The answer for Outlich is that this deck is just way too slow and does need supplementary engines to actually allow you to play on a different scale, as opposed to just sending Outlich cards to your graveyard. That's not normally how the deck needs to play. Once it gets its engine going, all of those mill cards are pretty much useless. Grass is Greener pretty much already does that. And even though Grass is Greener, I believe, is semi-limited, it's either semi-limited or limited, it's still fairly searchable, but I'm going to leave you guys up to me. Let me know what you think about that. I don't think that it's going to be really effective. I think it'll actually be more effective in Shadalls, but that really doesn't say much about Shadalls here. A 60-card Shadall deck was probably better off using Grass. A 40-card Shadall deck using the Ishizu cards, I think it makes Shadall better. Because before, Shadall was an Xbox crossplay off. I think it makes Shadall better, because now you get all of these crazy Shadall cards in your graveyard to gain effects, but the clunkiness of the Ishizu cards not necessarily helping your Shadall cards like combo off. They only put Shadall cards in your graveyard, and sometimes you don't need to just put Shadall cards in your graveyard. One thing I will not understate is that Kelbeck is actually a really, really good Yu-Gi-Oh card, because it's a hand trap that people don't respect from time to time that can summon itself and get rid of an opponent's threat. So there's that. For right now, I'm going to say Exo Stepsisters are and take a really good pilot. This deck, actually, I'm going to say it's going to be next best deck. If I can put Crystal Beast here, I'm probably going to put Exo Sister because there's going to be more players that are going to start using the graveyard with their Kelbeck cards. Maybe I haven't figured out exactly what it is, but if they do, Exo Sister becomes a next best deck. And just like Crystal Beast, Exo Sister has a more favorable matchup against Tearlament that is coming out soon in Master Duel, unfortunately, than some of the other strategies that you guys are currently playing. Overall, this deck has all of the support that it needs and is a fairly solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck. It's just waiting for a graveyard-dominant Yu-Gi-Oh deck to be able to thrive. Floowandereeze is still a really good deck. It's still extremely solid, really, really powerful. Losing the barrier statue was not really a problem. I still think, even in TCG and Master Duel, play Fossil Down Apache Cephalo at 3, and you kind of still have your barrier statue there. It's not as searchable, but it's still a really powerful combo. Gem Knight, okay, so I would tell you never to play Gem Knight because there's only one variant of Gem Knight, and it's always an FTK. This Gem Knight FTK loses to just about any hand trap in the game. You know what I mean? So also, FTKs are not good for the community. What Konami seems to be doing is giving us the Gem Knight FTK, but not hitting anything to prevent the Gem Knight FTK. But to be fair, I think we still already have the Gem Knight FTK now, and if we didn't, we had it with Union Carrier, and no one was still playing it. So even with more Gem Knight support, I would still stay away from this deck. The Gem Knight cards look really, really cool, but unfortunately, it's either FTK with this deck or it's nothing, and that's just how it's always been. G-Golems, I would say G-Golems are a lot of effort. I don't think that G-Golems is a bad Yu-Gi-Oh deck. It's a decent Cybers deck. The problem with G-Golems is why play G-Golems when you can play Mass Effect? Why play G-Golems when you can play Marine Cess? Why play G-Golems when you can play Salaman Great? Salaman Great's 3 structure decks. Like, why would you do that? And the fact still remains that your G-Golem monsters are Earth monsters, and they do lock you into Cybers, but like they require Earth Cybers now because when you get locked into Cybers, you get locked into Cybers. So like, where do you, like, you can't make Link Spider all the time. Like that requires a normal monster. So, excuse me. And I know the G-Golem monster, the level 5 can put 3 monsters and like do all that crazy stuff, but now you're using up extra deck space. There's almost no reason to play G-Golem in my head right now that you wouldn't be better off playing another Cypress deck, but you could mix G-Golem and Adamantimator. Grass decks, I think grass decks are probably in that takes a really good pilot scale right now. I'm optimistic to see what's going to happen with these grass decks and the Ishizu cards. I don't think I've ever seen a format with grass and Ishizu in the same thing. So it's going to be really, really interesting to send the top 20 cards off the top of your deck, then be able to send the top additional 10 cards off the top of your deck and get your combo started. But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to deck build and building perfectly. Now, unfortunately, we got to put Gravekeepers in here because there was Gravekeeper support in the set. Don't read the Gravekeeper support. Gravekeeper's Trap is Gravekeeper support, but Gravekeepers are not a good Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Unfortunately, none of the Gravekeeper support actually helps Gravekeepers, which is fucking weird. Like, it's bad. None of the Ishizu cards help Gravekeepers whatsoever. They require interactions, which are Earth Fairies, and they send off the top for the deck to the graveyard, which none of the Gravekeepers interact well with. It's just not even good. Like, I didn't want to do my mans like this, but it is what it is. A pure Ishizu deck. Yeah, no. I think that's just as bad. A pure Ishizu deck does not sound like it. But overall, Ishizu as an engine, I think right now it's a lot of effort. If we get Naturia cards, or if we get the Tearlament cards soon, it becomes like the best engine ever. But I wanted to take time to talk about the Ishizu isn't, because currently off the top of my head, there's these cool combos. Like you can run it in Phantom Knight, you can run it in Shadol, you can run it in ABC to get your parts in the graveyard, you can run it in Outlet, you can run it in this, that, and this, and it gets cards in the graveyard. Cool. But none of those decks, none of those strategies that I just mentioned has the advantage gained like Tearlament or Runic would, or like a Vernal Sylph Madolche deck would, or something like that. I do like that you do have graveyard manipulation, but as we're starting to look in Master Duel, some of our graveyard decks aren't too reliant on a graveyard where it's like game winning. You're going to need to be able to establish a really good board on top of Disrupt the Graveyard, and that's something that the decks that currently off the top of my mind are using this deck are the Ishizu cards can't. Labyrinth is one of the strongest decks in Master Duel. I'm going to put it in Nest decks. Mycopium was definitely hitting. Mycopium was hitting strong here. I do think that this is one of the best decks in Master Duel, though. It's extremely good. It's one of the better trap decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! That can play going second thanks to the Labyrinth hand trap cards and stuff like that. Overall, it's a really solid deck. Marine Cess. Marine Cess is one of the next best decks. I think it's a solid one card, good starter deck, and it does search hand traps, so that's really good. Mathmech is still one of the best decks in the game. Difference between these two right now. This can't make World Sea Dragons Elantis. When you find out about that card, I'm telling you, it's nutty. But this card can, it can do a lot of crazy things like play Mathmech. You've probably seen how this deck operates in the format so much. It's the reason why Nibiru is being played right now. Phantom Knights, I wouldn't say that they're bad. I would 100% say that they're a lot of effort. The Ishizu cards do not help you revive your strategy. Maybe if there were level 3s that can summon themselves, maybe, but they don't help. It's just going to add more brick to it. I do like the synergy between your Torn Scales being able to discard your Kelbeck or Agito. That's not bad. Plunder Patrol, I think Plunder Patrol is a lot of effort. I don't think it's a bad strategy. I just think you really got to know. And as we start to diversify more into an Earth pool, I think this deck will struggle. If, Adamantivators get more play, if, the Shizu cards see more play, and we get the Shizu Shufflers, this deck is not going to be in the best of spots. Punk, one of the best decks, hands down. This deck is crazy good right now. It's just amazing. Rika, I would still say one of the best decks in the game. One card combos. People have figured out how to play the deck efficiently. Really, really good. Runic is probably one of the best decks as well. And Runic might be the best strategy to play with the Ishizu cards, guys. Like, that is going to be really, really crazy in Master Duel. But overall, I don't think it will be, I'm not sure if it'll be that impactful. So there's some really cool things where you can send like multiple cards off of both players' top of the decks and deck them out. But the secret thing about this is just getting multiple Runic cards in your graveyard to always be able to draw 3. I thought that that's pretty cool. Solomon Great, it just takes a really good, it's a lot of effort. I ain't even gonna cap. It's a lot of effort, guys. It's a lot of effort. It's not a bad Yu-Gi-Oh deck, but you can tell it's just flat out power crept. Scareclaw, I'm going to say a lot of effort, especially with Nibiru running around. We know Sprite's one of the best decks. Swordsoul, don't disrespect Swordsoul. These are some of the best decks in the entire game. No cap. Thunder Dragon, not a bad deck. These cards do not help. I keep on telling you guys, these cards are a lot of help, do not help. Trebregate still probably will hang in there as one of the better decks. If they start milling off your deck, you can get your effects of Nerval and Kit, which I guess isn't bad. Umi can play Graveyard Disruption like Macrocosmos and DeFi, I guess. So like there's that. And then I would say Virtual World takes a lot really good pilot. But that's pretty much all what I got for what I think is going to be the top decks, the easiest decks to play to grind to the highest level in Master Duel. If you guys want a deep side novice, I think these decks can get the plat. I think they'll be able to get the diamond, though it'll be harder than to get to these decks. These decks are easily diamond. These decks can easily get to maybe low plat fairly easily. You still can get to diamond with them. That's the potential. These decks, holy shit. Some of these are like gold plat potential, like plat, low die. It's just up in the air with these. These are like, it is. But that's pretty much all that I got. Let me know what you guys think about these rankings. And of course, I'll catch you on the next one.